This video is yet another Detroit Lions centric mock draft where I take a look at what I think the front office and Brad Holmes are going to do in next Thursday's NFL draft. I base this off of the quite obvious needs that the Lions have, although it's an incredibly deep roster. I think one of the top five rosters in the NFL on both sides of the ball. There are some very distinct places or locations that I think Brad Holmes and the front office need to address and try to upgrade or at least build depth at a minimum. Number two, I also have done significant work leading up to the draft. It's a labor of love for me to try to evaluate 100 players. That was my original goal. And I will let something flow through as I kind of describe this. This is a shared document that I have made available to the people in my Patreon/Discord. Already, I will make it available to anyone probably at the end of this video, or at least sometime this week. Let's put it that way. My original goal or intention was 100 players evaluated. And so when I say evaluated, anyone that's in blue there, that's a hyperlink, is available as a player that has an eval done that someone could read. Short eval at this point, you've all probably read dozens of them. So mine could just be taken as with a grain of salt, if you will. But I also try to add the film that proves why I provide those evaluations and some of those thoughts that I have. In any case, it's going to be close whether or not I'll get done with 100 of them by Thursday. That was the intention originally. And why do I do that? I do that to try to have a global knowledge of as many players as possible leading into the draft. It's probably an example of my reach exceeding my grasp. Yet another example of that. Certainly a lot of fun to do, uh, especially in light of the fact that I know that the market is really saturated for draft analysis, especially for people that are willing or able to put a film out on their YouTube channel. In my case, it generally goes up on my Discord and or my Twitter/X profile. So let's get started with the picks and what was available at each selection. On the left-hand side, you'll generally see a global a group of players that are available and or certain positions. We know that for Detroit, it's the edge defender, it's the outside linebacker, defensive end spot. So here's the group that was available at 28. Upon selection, Mike Green for the Ravens was there at 27. And I conducted this mock draft for the Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks, but in presentation, splitting it up into three separate pieces of content. I do want to forewarn you. First of all, I don't think Mike Green will be available at 27 for Baltimore, but if he is, you can expect multiple teams to try to trade up and gain control of pick 27 because they know that Detroit is in line looking for an edge defender. That there is some possible criticism there that I recognize people may levy at Brad Holmes, meaning if you didn't make your needs so obvious, teams wouldn't so easily be able to trade up in front of you. The other corollary off of that or branch is maybe Brad Holmes trades up with the Baltimore Ravens. But I think that trading up one pick with this much talent at the edge defender position is probably not in your best interest. Just a couple of scenarios I wanted to mention. Shamar Stewart had just gone to the LA Rams. Mike Green, like I said, to the Ravens. I think Scourton is probably the Detroit pick here. I do really like Donovan Ezuraku, and he's got great pass rush skills, a lot of moves. There's some concern for me there in terms of some run plays, not his ability to defend the run, but actual willingness to do so and run plays away from him. If you go check out my draft document that I mentioned and showed a little video of earlier, kind of see some explanations and or examples of that. But I think Ezuraku is a tremendous talent, smaller. Maybe there's something to be said for if the rumors are true and Zadarius Smith is still in play to return for 2025, that they would draft Ezuraku. Because there are some similarities between Nick Scourton or Scorton and Donovan, excuse me, and Zadarius Smith. If you don't address outside linebacker edge position here, you run the risk of who's available at 60 for you, and would you have to trade up to get the player that you want to fit in? So I went with Scourton, and again, I recognize that the Zadarius Smith return is apparently possible, which would be great, in my opinion, to see him and Scourton there, and then a healthy Aiden Hutchinson as well, along with Josh Pascal and other guys. From an athletic standpoint, I really wouldn't have a problem if someone advocated for Donovan Ezeraku to be the pick because he does present such a refined set of pass rush moves. Really looks like a guy in those situations that's already kind of been in the league for a couple of years. I think Scourton or Scorton is pretty close as well. Just a little bit bigger frame, 6'4", 6'5", 260 pounds. I like him as much as I like pretty much any other edge defender in this draft, not named Mike Green or Abdul Carter. All right, so we get to pick 60, round two. For me, Alfred Collins is a pretty obvious choice here for these guys. The global list is on the left hand side. You can see Collins is down there. I really do like Trey Harris, the receiver from Ole Miss. Detroit's not, in on receiver. The fifth year option for Jamison Williams is looming, I guess. Darian Porter, a corner who you don't see on this board on the left hand side, excuse me, is someone that I think extremely highly of. The film, number one, was fantastic for 2024 at Iowa State. And number two, I just was fortunate enough to do a show with a guy named Ken from Film Study Ravens over the weekend. He does fantastic work. And generally, prior to the draft, him and I do a podcast together that is the top 10 corners in the NFL draft, and we'll alternate, go back and forth, him presenting his number 10, me presenting my number 10. Oftentimes there's a lot of overlap. And in fact, this year, in an organic manner, I think we had 9 players overlapped among our top 10, essentially only one difference between us. He pointed something out to me that I think is an amazing stat as it relates to Darian Porter. I believe he only had 17 targets in 2024. And of those 17 targets, 5 of them were complete, but 3 of them were intercepted. Now, one of them I think was a Hail Mary situation against Iowa in a game that he just pretty much dominated, took over, if you will, after Iowa State had fallen behind by double digits. In any case, it's a small sample size. If you had a surplus pick here, meaning if you had an additional pick like some of the other teams that I've paid attention to do, the Seattle Seahawks being one of the main ones, then you may look at a Darian Porter at pick 60. But I recognize, the depth that is there at outside corner right now with Terran Arnold in his second year, DJ Reed. Amik Robertson played like a warrior late in the season, obviously moving to outside corner. And then Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Returning for his second year as well. So I get it. Some Lions fans will say, Coach, I think you're a little off base here with Darian Porter. He's just a personal favorite of mine, and one where I think the numbers really line up with the film. By going edge defender at 28, I think it really sets the board up well for Brad Holmes in the front office. You can now go with best talent available, and that's another reason why I went into the Darian Porter explanation. If you didn't go edge defender, what you have available, Landon Jackson, Princely Uman-Malayan, and then Braden Swinson. Good players as well, but I don't know that they necessarily get to the effectiveness in year one of a Nick Scouterton. So I took Alfred Collins. To fortify the defensive line, especially with Lee McNeil being out for a period of time, and really set up that defense to succeed in the first year with a new defensive coordinator. Moving to pick 3 for the Lions, pick 102, that is. If this draft is going to be a home run, I think that the front office needs to hit big here, meaning their first 2 picks have got to be guys that contribute in year one, as well as pick 102. Can you get to the point where you recreate the 2022 draft? No. First of all, you're not in those positions to do so. But I think you've got to have something that's a little higher quality and also provides a little bit more depth than the 2024 draft last year, which I'm not willing to criticize at this point. Some of that stuff will still shake out as time moves on, and some of the developmental players, Manu specifically, get an opportunity to maybe get on the field. At pick 102, does he have to draft a starter? No, but someone who can probably contribute. Of the guys who I have studied, the name that keeps sticking out to me is Zy Frazier from UTSA. The corner, you may have never heard of his name before, and that's fine. 6 interceptions in 2024, 6'3", 4'3", 40, tremendous athleticism and testing. Noah Williams is another guy with, I think, 7 interceptions for Cal last year. A couple of other names to mention here, just based on the guys who I have significant film study or experience checking out their film, and that's Dylan Fairchild. I think he's an underrated guard from Georgia. Smaller, quicker, maybe. Looks like a guy who you can just plug in a game situation, and he can at least compete. I think the play here at this spot is probably corner or offensive line. And you may say, Coach, I think we've got enough corners as is. I do think there's opportunity to draft one this year for the Lions and kind of get someone else on a different developmental cycle. Really, I guess if you draft someone this year, they're on the same developmental cycle as Arnold and Rakestraw, just maybe 1 year's behind. I would like to say that by drafting the third round and or fourth round corner, you put someone in a different spot, meaning they're one round, they're 1 year behind Rakestraw, but they're actually in the same year from the standpoint of when their contract would potentially expire. Hopefully, I said that in a way that makes sense, because if you don't draft them in the first round, you don't get that 5th year option. In any case, that group is good. Arnold, DJ Reed, Rakestraw, Amik Robertson, one of my personal favorites. I also like the Avonte Maddox signing because he's a tough nickel defender, someone who, when he did get opportunities to play for the Eagles, was able to perform well. In any case, I went with Ozzie Trapillo, the offensive lineman from Boston College, because to me, I think the guard position looks a little thin for Detroit. Maybe, perhaps I shouldn't say thin. You would like to build depth there, and of course, Trapillo did clearly play tackle for Boston College. I think he looks like a guy who could move around some. Manu is a backup tackle who didn't get much opportunity at all this year. He's on certainly a different curve from an experience and developmental standpoint. I think Trapillo comes in as a guy who looks more ready to go and has a higher level of competition that he's faced clearly. And I did leave some good talent on the board here at pick 102, Frazier being the main one for me. If you hadn't gone edge defender, it's possible that you could get a pretty solid football player at this point. You can see some of the guys that were still on the board. Jared Ivey is a bigger, stronger, quote, defensive end type who's been on the board all 3 times when I have selected in the third round for the Ravens and the Lions. The last 3 times I've done a mock draft, let me put it that way, Jared Ivey has been there. And I know some others who have him significantly higher than being as the 119th rated player, like you see here from the NFL mock database. But in any case, I went with Trapillo, like I said, fortifying the offensive line. For some reason, I didn't provide selections for my last pick, Zy Frazier, the corner, who I'm really fond of his film and watching him compete. Very dangerous guy. I would almost put him a little bit in the Darian Porter kind of grouping. And I will say this, and Lions fans will have some awareness of Reek Woolen, or Tariq Woolen as he was known during his rookie season. The NFL missed on Reek Woolen. Many teams did, including the Seahawks. They didn't take him until the 5th round. Frazier and Porter are the 6'3 corners who both run 4.3 40s. Tremendous athleticism. And in fact, Darian Porter, 9.99 RAS score, really fits with what I think Brad Holmes and those guys like to draft. You don't really get that necessarily with Frazier, although you do get higher production from last year. 6 INTs. He's a ball hawk, great height, great length. I like this haul of players. It surprised me a little bit how it turned out. I would be interested in anyone else who's checked out the video this far. I'd like to thank you for doing so, first of all. It's been very difficult to produce content lately with how much college film I'm watching, number one, and number two, how little time I have on my hands to actually try to create any content that I think is worthy of your time. If you've not gone edge in the first round in any of your mocks, please let me know how that turns out. Because I decided after completing this mock draft today, Monday, that I was going to do 3 or 4 online and not go edge defender for the Lions and see who's available at 60. Because I felt like there was some pretty good talent still on the board late first round that Detroit could gather. And the reason why I bring that up is this. I am concerned that some team or teams are going to recognize the Lions' focus and need on drafting an edge rusher, pass rusher, and depending on how many are left when Baltimore goes to pick at 27, try to leapfrog in front of Detroit. That's a real concern of mine. And the only reason I bring it up is because I have knowledge or awareness of both teams' situations. The Ravens fan base wants Baltimore and Eric DeCosta to pick an edge defender. I don't think we need one. When I did this draft, again, I completed this for 3 teams, the Ravens, Lions, and Seahawks. I did take Mike Green at pick 27. I don't personally think the Ravens have to select an edge defender. And in fact, I think the draft board sets up better for Baltimore when they take an offensive lineman. Detroit is in the opposite scenario, in my opinion. When they take an edge defender first in the first round, the rest of the board really flows well, like I think it did here for me. You're welcome to let me know if you disagree with the players. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But let me know how the board flows for you if you don't take an edge defender at 28 when you complete a mock draft for the Detroit Lions, because I think that's really how Brad Holmes has to lead this thing off next Thursday night. In any case, I appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you'd like to see me do another mock draft or some other focused video prior to next week's draft, please let me know in the comment section. I'll try to get that done. I believe I'm going to live stream during this year's mock draft. I've never really attempted to do that before, but I have the opportunity to get that done next Thursday night. If you'd be interested in checking out some of my live stream for that, please let me know in the comment section. That could kind of be the nail there for me to figure out or finalize what my intentions are. Appreciate you guys' time.